Alright, the last time I talked about a LAN and a LAN recap, I definitely had a sort of story to tell just because it was a pretty monumental event, all things considered, whereas the LAN I attended, last weekend by now, was, I'm going to have many positive things to say about it, but it is kind of just a yearly thing, right? It's something we expected to happen, and I would say it did exceed expectations, but not in such a way that I'm going to have some crazy stories to tell, so it will mostly be kind of a recap what happened, and I will dive in a little bit on, I suppose, kind of the state of sixes going into the following season, because there are some things to talk about there. But anyway, yes, I did attend the recent RGL LAN in Philadelphia, and I'm sure many of you watched that live. I was actually one of only 2 casters there, since the third person who was planning to attend had some health issues, unfortunately, so was not able to go. So yeah, it was just me and Alto doing all the casting for every single match that RGL covered, which was fun. I was really expecting it to be much harder as physically than it actually ended up being. I actually did kind of injure my tongue in the sense that I bought cough drops because I very much needed cough drops at Denver earlier in the summer. And I was just kind of passively eating them because I didn't want to lose my voice, because that would have been a big deal. And whenever I had to talk during a cast while I had a cough drop in my mouth, I put it in the same spot, and I ended up getting a really bad sore on my tongue there, which was not great. But yeah, it was quite nice. It was a lot of fun to cast with Alto, which is someone who I haven't casted with before. They're primarily a Highlander player, which there's always concerns I have with Highlander players casting sixes and vice versa, just because, if you don't have as much experience in one metagame or the other, that does kind of limit the amount of analysis you can do. Now, that being said, I think that you can be an adequate caster. Well, not even adequate. You can be a good caster without doing much by way of analysis. But yeah, it was a pleasant experience. I would definitely... I would not be discouraged at all if the same thing were to happen again. I would happily cast a whole series with Alto again. But yeah, besides that, a lot of new faces this time around. Just people who either weren't living in the Denver area, or rather were living closer to the Philly area and made a point to go there rather than Denver, or just people who when both were announced, picked one to go to, and it just so happened to be this one. Yeah, a lot of new players, and it was fun to meet people. And yeah, everyone who came up said hi, things like that. It was a pleasure. What else? Well, let's talk about the competition this time around. So, obviously not intercontinental competition. This was just RGL's Invite playoffs being played at LAN. So, strictly North American, and kind of the teams, well, it's new teams, same faces, new teams, basically. Basically, same Froyo, although I suppose they don't have Slemnish this time around, who is playing on a different team, and they don't have Hubada. Who did they have on Flank Scout? It was Habib on Flank Scout, yeah, and Logan was playing demo. But still, Froyo showed up. Global Clan showed up again, who was... I don't know if they were monikered as Global Clan at Denver, but nevertheless, kind of some pug scrimmy, or puggy, I guess, teams got formed with Mama's Boys, who were looking like the favorites for sure, from my perspective, with quite a few faces on it. Skis the Goat was there. I'm not going to run down the whole rosters, actually, even though I casted them all weekend, so I'm sure I could conjure it up. And then the fourth team, besides those 3 I just mentioned, was Legacy, whose name I just kept forgetting and trying to remind myself of nonstop, because they used to be going by Jiminy. They had some roster changes midway through the season, but they were looking decently strong. And that always seemed like a roster to me that was gonna be hit or miss. I feel like they might have consistency troubles. Just because there's a lot of really talented DM players, but not necessarily the proven invite winning talent, the likes of which are on Froyotech or Mama's Boys. Global Clan, I think everyone expected to get fourth, but they had an exciting game against Froyo, actually, which might be spoiling things a little bit. Right, which isn't to say people on Legacy haven't won invite, but yeah, I don't know. They just seemed like a more or a less established team than their other competition in the top three. But that being said, during the regular season, the top three did trade maps off of each other. And there was kind of a triangle dynamic going on with Froyotech beating Mama's Boys, but losing to Legacy. Legacy obviously beating Froyotech, but losing to Mama's Boys, and Mama's Boys beating Legacy, but yet losing to Froyotech. Which really left things up in the air about how things would shake out during playoffs with those top three. It was kind of anyone's guess. Going into the tournament, I really expected Mama's Boys to be taking it just because the matches I casted with them, they were doing quite well. And again, they're just a very solid team with a bunch of solid, like, invite-winning players. So yeah, I kind of expected good things from them. Now, the extent to which they were actually like grinding or going for the win versus just kind of playing, I don't know. But still, obviously, plenty of talented players there. Anyway, let's talk about the game. So, the very first game was actually a banger of a match. It was Legacy vs. Froyo, which was one I was very excited to see because as the person who thought that Mama's Boys were going to win, the kind of second and third placements were going to be really exciting to me. And I thought that that Legacy and Froyo were quite evenly matched, which honestly proved kind of not the case. I mean, the matches were relatively close for the most part. They had some long games as well. And part of that was Legacy just like beefing last pushes, which I think part of that is just kind of like, yeah, I don't know. There were some like pretty basic things that were getting ignored, I felt like, but whatever. They ended up winning. So Froyo immediately in the loser's bracket. And again, this is something I mentioned at Denver, and something I talk about in general. Oh, neat little thing here. I'm a big fan of with the spy play. You can see I was just staring at the opponents. That's because I'm disguised as a friendly sniper. So now they think that we have a sniper, and might be playing that way accordingly. Yeah, just a little thing I like doing. Fortunately, this doesn't work out because apparently, okay, that works out. Later on, I think in this demo, I get spotted, because my feet poke out from under that truck, but whatever. So anyway, it's almost like cliche at this point to talk about how, you know, it's so weird that Froyo isn't just winning everything, but it really is. Like, if you got into TF2 and got into sixes when I did, you could have done it even earlier than me, because by the time I was getting into sixes, I was watching and subscribing to Banny, who was already kind of established as like the guy who wins all the time. And this is back in like 2014 and 15. So yeah, there were just years and years and years where Froyo just won and it wasn't even close. And grand finals ended up being like the least interesting match of the playoff series quite regularly. So that second and third place match tended to be more exciting. And that's why it was nice for that to be, well, in some ways nice, some ways a little scary for that to be the first match, because you don't want that to be like the highlight and then everything else after is not so great. Okay, yeah, but Froyo getting knocked in the loser's bracket, very surprising stuff. And I don't know, they just didn't seem to have the sauce. I don't know what else to say about that. I mean, Legacy were doing quite well. I think it was a 3-map series for their first meetup. But yeah, then Legacy moving on to fight Mama's Boys, who had already beaten Global Clan, which, no surprise there, number 1 seed versus number 4 seed. And yeah, it was an exciting match as well. I think it went to 3 maps also, with Legacy actually just completely like rolling Mama's Boys on what was their own map pick of Granary. was like a 5-0, not particularly close. Not like mid to last super roll, but not that far off. And yeah, it did not look good at all. Okay, my med just giving up any percent of ad there to get the Australium. Very nice. Yeah, you can tell this is kind of a trolly pug scrim, but whatever. So yeah, it was really kind of shocking, I guess, that the team that I thought was going to win LAN just gets rolled on map 1. They do claw it back, however. They get their footing in the second map, end up winning that, and then third map, they close it out. So it did look more like a kind of warm-up diff, but still the maps were close. But nonetheless, they secured their grand final spot in the winner's bracket, and yeah, now it's the rematch. Actually, it is going to be the rematch of Froyo versus Legacy, but Froyo had a close game against Global Clan, the 4th seed team that really didn't seem to be in the top 4, well, in the like top 3 contenders, I'll say. They definitely seemed more like kind of the odd duck out in that regard. I mean, they lost pretty handily to Mama's Boys. I'm pretty sure that actually they didn't pair up against Legacy during playoffs, but I'm sure that wouldn't have gone well for them. But a close game against Froyo that went to map 3, which kind of bodes poorly for Froyo Tech, because it's like, how are you guys struggling against the 4th place competition here? But nonetheless, they do close it out, so they make it to losers finals. But against Legacy, it wasn't as close the second time around. Pretty sure Legacy took it in 2 maps. Now, the maps themselves were relatively close, but Legacy seemed to be cleaning things up a bit day 2. And that's always something you have to consider is these matches, I'm pretty sure, happened the second day. Losers finals and grand finals happened the second day. So there is the adjustment period where teams can kind of look over stuff and talk about what went well and what went wrong and fix things for the future. And again, Banny and Furiotech are notoriously good at those adjustments, but did not seem to pan out this time around. So they actually ended up getting 3rd place, which a lot of people are Banny anti-fans and love to see him lose just because he wins all the time. And I will say that it can be fun to see the upsets, and even though like Froyo have kind of not been the best team for a little bit here, depending on what competition shows up. Oh yeah, here's where I get revealed, I'm pretty sure, because of the truck, maybe? Oh, no, maybe I have it out, and okay, good enough play. Right, but they just kind of always seem like the perpetual winners, so it's hard to like ever consider them the underdogs. Anyway, yeah, 3rd place Banny. Very, very exciting stuff, I guess. But nonetheless, Legacy versus Mama's Boys, I was expecting Grands to be the least interesting game, because again, last time around, the only map that Legacy got over them was map 1, which was a roll. But it did, again, just seem like the fact that they were coming off hot from a close match against Furiotech that they won, whereas Mama's Boys just hadn't really been playing, and yeah, it just seemed like they were more warm. So I was thinking if Mama's Boys took the first map, then the series was probably over, because the best chance that Legacy had was just being more warm and having some early momentum. Now, that being said, it's worth mentioning that in TF2, at least for RGL, the map, so the upper bracket advantage is not a bracket reset advantage. It is something more minor in the form of a map advantage, which also does, I should say, lend itself sometimes to those less interesting grand finals, just because if, again, one team is like, and this has usually been Froyo, one team is like much better than the others, and they already have a map advantage going into grand finals, then yeah, yeah, it can be over kind of quickly. Let's see what Macron can do to follow up with the, oh, that's it. Okay, I guess, oh yeah, because we had a thing after that. Okay, time to load up. Something random here. Boom. That is literally the same demo. Holy, what are the odds? Right. So yeah, with the map advantage, Mama's Boys did win map 1, and it was looking over for me. I was thinking, okay, I want Legacy to at least get a map because it'd be more exciting that way. And they did end up taking map 2. And it's worth talking about kind of the pace of these games, because all things considered, the quality of TF2 was not lacking, but there were definitely like some gimmicks or just like optimizations that I think people should have been doing. And I have a few examples. So for starters, this was a pretty slow series in the sense that Mama's Boys in particular really just did not counter-aggress out of their own last, which is a decision you can make. But even when the other team would sack like 3 players, for instance, they would just play for the reset. So for context, if anyone might be new to competitive TF2 or North American TF2 in our config, you can see at the top of the screen on my HUD, there is a round timer. It starts at 4 minutes, so we just capped the point and it reset to 4 minutes. If that hits 0, we reset to a mid-fight, where both teams just return to spawn. And that's something that usually favors the defending team, because right now we have control of mid, so we don't want to have to play a mid-fight just to get the point that we already have right now. So a round reset is something that players that the attacking team typically wants to avoid, and that the defending team is all right with. This is more pronounced when you're on the last point rather than the second point. Because the second point, I mean, mid's not super hard to push into traditionally on most maps, so it's usually an achievable prospect. But pushing out of last can be quite difficult, and again, if you slip up just even a little bit, then you can just lose a round. So it's a risky endeavor, and you have to be intelligent about the amount of aggression you're willing to take and the amount of risks you're willing to take out of your own last. And in my opinion, Mama's Boys really erred on the side of excessive caution, just because, again, they would have like multiple kills in the sense of like 3 kills, which is usually enough to at least be pressuring forward, at least make something happen, and they would just do nothing with it. Now, that being said, like if someone just like double sacks into your last and you don't want to counter sack, like, okay, so be it. I think that that's something that can still be done well. As in, there's still a viable amount of risk reward there, but if you want to just leave something out on the table, then I think that's your decision to make. But I was hoping to see more like I was hoping to see that getting capitalized on more, because there is a downside to never pushing out of last and to just playing the reset, even when the reset is like pretty far away, in the sense that like there's maybe 2.5 minutes still until the reset. That's like plenty of time for people to do stuff. I think that, yeah, being more aggressive, and this is something that I've talked about before in its own video, of just last hold breaking strategies. You can just take more risks and kind of force teams to react. This is something that I was talking about a lot during the weekend. And I actually get a little self-conscious about, because I really don't like it. When I think of casts that I've watched that I like particularly disliked, most of the time what stands out to me is it's someone who might not necessarily know what they're talking about, like criticizing much better players with a level of confidence that they shouldn't have. So I actually asked a couple people, like, hey, am I being like too complainy and annoying about the fact that like this team just keeps playing sniper instead of like 3 or 4 manning? Because yeah, I didn't want to be that guy, but it did seem like the more aggressive options, such as 3-man sacks, such as, I mean, the sap soldier bomb plays were at first pretty bad, but started picking up some traction. We didn't see any banners. We saw some banners actually, but I think it was a defensive banner. But we didn't see any man treads, for example. Yeah, it just seemed like a lot of kind of do nothing until you're just stuck having to do something drastic, and then you take the Uber exchange that never works and it doesn't work, and then you reset. Versus, I mean, when you sack 3 players, 4 players, you're really likely to get a force, or way more likely than if you just do a standard double sack with pressure. But also, you're kind of putting the opponents in an uncomfortable position, because if they choose to push out with their picks, which is usually a pretty achievable plan when you 3-man, or especially 4-man, it's like guaranteed they can push out, then you're telling them, like, hey, if you push out and cap second, you are resetting the point while we have uber advantage because we got the force. Even if you don't get the force, like, you're still resetting things to a somewhat favorable position, because again, it's gonna be even ubers. Yeah, it's gonna be even ubers, but you have mid rather than having to play the reset. You can kind of cook there, make some things happen, maybe even get some momentum into last. I don't know. I like the dynamic situation. That's just my personal opinion. And I was seeing a lot of what looked like really nice plays in the sense of, like, especially on Metalworks, there were a couple double soldier sacks that, and it was just 2 bans, right? Like, pretty standard sacking stuff, getting like 130 damage on the med. And then rather than continue that or just send 1 extra player to ensure that force, and potentially set yourself up for add into last, which is a highly likely situation to score around. Instead of doing something like that, the team that, well, this was Mama's Boys particularly, played a lot of sniper into last. They would just play the sniper pace, which we had already seen like 5 or 6 times already, just wasn't really working. So yeah, I feel like there was some adjustment there that could have been made. So that was a little annoying, I guess. But outside of that, I mean, the quality of play was fine. Again, pace kind of slow. Almost like, you know, I bet that if it was a European team doing that, then everyone in chat would be just clowning on them nonstop. But what are you going to do? Right. Anything else? Okay, well, yes. Let us continue then with how the playoffs, or how grand finals ended up going. So it's 2-1. Because, again, the map advantage for Mama's Boys, they won map 1, but Legacy actually ended up getting map 2, which was surprising. And come map 3, suddenly Legacy gets it again. And then in Grand Finals, like the last map of Grand Finals, it was a close game on Metalworks. And there was actually a very unfortunate technical issue that was very anticlimactic. Not really RGL's fault or anything like that, more so like the venue's fault, I guess. Or just something that more precaution should be taken against next time, because Skeez's computer was like just stuttering and like not working well. So they needed to get a new computer, which meant needing to reinstall everything and put the new config on. So it ended up being like probably like a 20 or 30 minute break. I don't know why that soldier landed on. I guess I'm the furthest forward, so I'm the guy who gets landed on, but still, like, it's annoying. Right. So that was kind of anticlimactic, especially since the series had up to that point, I think, just been tied, despite Legacy having a pretty sizable lead. And then, like, 15 minutes later, it ended, which I guess is better than, like, 3 minutes later, but it still felt pretty quick. Holy, what a sticky. And then I hit nothing afterwards. Right. So that was the series. Legacy actually won it, and that was very surprising. And to me, kind of says that, I mean, there's obviously a lot of really talented players on Legacy, but I don't know if Speedy or Zam, which were their soldiers, have won Invite before or not. Yeah, I'm not sure on that. But, it was cool to see some new faces in the Invite, winnership. I mean, Sai as well as someone who's traditionally played on like 3rd place teams. So actually winning is quite nice. And I think that it kind of solidifies Lolgai as just like the best med playing this game, and maybe the best med to play this game, because, and I mentioned this at the actual event itself, he has won Invite on like multiple different rosters in a way that I don't know if other players have. Like, Banny's always been playing on Freotech. Of course, there's been different variations of Freotech, I suppose. But Lolgai has played with drastically different rosters, with drastically different dynamics, and been able to win on all of them, whether it be Witness Gaming in Season 6, or like a G6 for the multiple seasons they won, and now with Legacy. And, yeah, he just seems like not just like a mechanically talented medic, of course, which you kind of need to be to win, but I think he just brings a lot to a team environment as far as comms are concerned, particularly when it comes to kind of wrangling players, because there are pocket scouts that will play with Lolgai and win Invite who I don't know if they would with other medics. Like, no disrespect to these scouts, but like he seems to take scouts and turn them into like Invite winning pocket scouts, which is crazy. Like, all you need to do as scout is like have the good DM. You still have to be smart, of course, but yeah, Lolgai's comms and coordination with his team just seems like something we haven't seen from other medics before. Right. Any other insights? So, there's a lot of lock and load talk, because this was, I think, the first North American Grand Finals where both demos were using lock and load basically the whole time. And yeah, there's more people. It seems like there's another wave of momentum about wanting it banned, which again, I wouldn't mind. I'm kind of ambivalent on the unlock overall. I do think it does just kind of come down to yeah, what you value as far as bans or restrictions are concerned. Because, yes, it's not like a direct upgrade, but there are certain circumstances that it's very strong. I mean, I was like an early advocate of the lock back in the day. And yeah, it's good. Like, there's a reason people use it, of course. That enabling longer range capabilities is quite nice. It does streamline Ubers as well. Everyone does clown on EU for their motivation for banning lock. Like, the primary reason they said was that it is too good against sentries, which is not the primary reason to use it, but it is admittedly like quite convenient to just be able to take an Uber and only shoot 2 projectiles for the gun rather than 3, which saves a ton of time. But also, if you just catch a nice timing peeking into last and even Ubers, you can just 2-pipe the gun. And a gun is a really, really important thing to take out in a last push or a last sack attempt. So much so that players will literally spawn spy and roll out just to sap the gun and expect no other value than that. So it is still valuable for that. But yeah, as someone who like doesn't really have issues against the lock necessarily, I don't really care if it's included or not. But it does seem like there's some momentum, so we might see some whitelist changes in North America coming in the future. But yeah, besides that, I think that metagame-wise, things could have been more precise at LAN. Another big thing was spy checking, or just off-class checking on spy. There was really not a lot of it. Very little, in fact. Even when there was like no reason not to me, kind of just seemed sloppy. Especially since the players who would be off-class checking were just kind of running around on scout and not really doing anything valuable. Like, there's just no opportunity cost to me. Just seemed kind of lazy. That being said, I don't think that... well, no, like there were some spy sap plays that ended up working out quite well. So the knowledge of you have a spy or something like that would absolutely make those less successful. And yeah, just seemed a little sloppy. With regards to other like sacking things as well, I would have loved to see more aggression as far as 4-mans are concerned and things of that nature, even 3-mans, just working your way to it rather than snipe for 2.5 minutes and then exchange and reset. Right, but anyway, exciting series nonetheless. It was cool to see kind of a new team win. I don't expect Legacy will stick together, but yeah, who knows what the future of Invite will be. Nevertheless, this past season was a good one, and yeah, the event was really fun. Anything else? I think that's probably it. Little recap of what's going on in the TF2 Invite North American landscape. What is going on with the past LAN that I was at, and what the future of Sixes might hold for the upcoming season. But anyway, oh, you know what? I'm pretty sure that trap gets a drop, so I'm gonna keep it going. I do like that better than trapping the actual like electrical box itself, because it doesn't like, no matter how well you set the electrical box one, like stickies can clip through, and also it's just it gets cleared way more often than that one. So, yep, there you have it. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed. Subscribe if you haven't. Got to remember to keep saying that. But yeah, see you all next time.